A lot of expectations to enter this year. You got Mikal Bridges, traded for Karl-Anthony Towns. There was a lot going on. You decided to get off Dante DiVincenzo, Julius Randle. Do you think that the Knicks are contenders or pretenders?
I think it's too soon to tell, actually. And I say my takeaway, though, from all that you just said is the Knicks aren't just falling short against the NBA's elite teams. They're getting crushed. I mean, they're 0-7 against Cleveland, Boston, and OKC. More than a 20-point average margin of deficit. If you look at the scores of those games, the first game of the season, actually, Boston beat New York 118-105. Then they lost to Cleveland 142-105. Lost again to Boston 131-104. Lost to OKC 126-101. Lost again to OKC 117-107. Lost to Cleveland 110-104. And lost to Boston just this past Sunday 132-109. So they can't beat the elite teams, as you said. They have a good season overall, and they're probably a safe bet to remain a top 3 seed in the East. Both Towns and Brunson are having good seasons, headed for the All-NBA selections, I think. Josh Hart, one of the most impactful players in the league. The offense is elite. They've stayed relatively healthy. Mitchell Robinson's close to coming back now. But they can't beat these can't beat the Cavs, Thunder, or the Celtics, and that's a big issue. And losing all those games by double digits, the big picture to me says the Knicks defense is going to be a postseason problem for them, and it should be a strength as Thibodeau is a defensive coach. I'm surprised his defense is so poor this year against these elite teams. Anunoby, Hart, and Bridges are strong defensive players. Anunoby isn't totally healthy, and Robinson is just getting back. Maybe that will help in the paint protection a little bit. They just don't have the juice defensively, and I'm not sure why, with Tom Thibodeau being their coach who focuses on defense. They're near the bottom 10 in defensive efficiency. In their 7 losses to the elite teams, they've given up an average of 126 points per game, which are not a championship contending numbers, even with an elite offense. They have the personnel to be better defensively, but it has has to come from Bridges, Anunoby, and Hart. Towns is not a strong defender in the paint. The team defense was built to be able to match up with two-way wing dominant lineups like Boston, but so far that part hasn't gone according to plan for them.
I think 100% at this current moment that they are 100% pretenders, because we have to take a look at some situations. For one, yeah, they've been out Mitch Robinson. I think that's what's killed them, because currently Karl-Anthony Towns is in the 7th percentile of rim defense. They have no interior defense. With Mitch Robinson probably a game or two away, and even Tom Thibodeau said recently that Mitch Robinson will be the starting center for the New York Knicks. That should be able to help them a little bit in the interior defense, because Karl-Anthony Towns is not helping them anywhere in that realm. Also, Precious Achiuwa, who would also fill into that role occasionally, being that low guy. He's horrible. He's actually their worst defender currently. If you take a look at the numbers, Precious Achiuwa is the worst defender that the Knicks have. But I think really when it comes to these 7 games, we have to add context to it, at least 2 of them in my opinion. But in every single one of them, they've had horrible first quarters. Every single one of them. Minus probably one of them. So here's the point here's the points scored in the first quarter, and then the point differential. The first game, we'll just go down. The 3 games against Boston, they scored 19, 19, and 24 points. With a minus 19, minus 11, and minus 19 point differential just in the first quarter. The 2 games against Cleveland so far, they scored 18 and 29 points. Minus 4, minus 12 in point differential. Against OKC the first time, or basically to open up the 2025 calendar year, they scored 30 points in the first quarter. That was still a minus 3 in the first quarter point differential-wise. And then the second game against OKC, which was only a week later, they scored 17 points in the first quarter, minus 14. So if you combine all those, they have a minus 82 point differential in the first quarter. If you can't start the games off well with a lead, you're not gonna do well. But how about the first half? Let's expand a little bit. Let's add another quarter in there. Well, against the Celtics, minus 21, minus 13, minus 19. Against Cleveland, The first game against Cleveland back in October 28th of 2024, they're actually +7. They finally get in the positive category. But this game, a couple days ago, 4 days ago, -27 at halftime. What about the games against OKC? +12 at first half to open up this calendar year. The second game, -27. So the first halves of games normally don't go very well. But the context I want to add to the two of these games is the October 28th game against Cleveland. The Knicks are doing a perfectly fine job. And then Darius Garland got 15 points in the fourth quarter, went 3 of 4 from 3, and Cleveland shot 64.7% from the floor in the fourth quarter. We're going to pick up a little bit of a pattern here. Just follow with me for a second. How about to open up the calendar year against OKC, where they actually played very well, only lost by 10 points, I believe it was 117-107. Well, Aaron Wiggins, a bench player, scored 15 points, shooting 4 of 4 from 3 in the fourth quarter. And what do Tom Thibodeau's teams normally are notorious for, and why they can't go very far? They average like 40 minutes per game. The top 5 players in minutes played, 3 of them are New York Knicks. Miles Bridges, Josh Hart, Jalen Brunson. I think it's fatigue. You can't play guys 36, 37 minutes per game and expect them to play at high levels through each of those quarters through an 82-game season. Because that does two things. One, increases fatigue. So when you get to the playoffs, you're not going to be able to play against tough teams who can go farther, who do have better rotations. Go up against the New York Knicks. We already saw that last year. And what we also saw last year is if you keep playing them an exorbitant amount of minutes, the injury risk is significantly higher, which we saw in the Pacers series last year, where we saw Mitch Robinson go down, I believe, in the first game. And then in the very last game, where they were basically going to get blown out anyway by the Pacers, Jalen Brunson had a hand issue. So I think right now, Tom Thibodeau, while he has brought New York Knicks basketball to a very respectable point, being one of the top seeds in the NBA the past couple of years, and even, 3 years ago, they were a respectable team. This way of playing basketball, where you're averaging the 3 out of the 5 highest minutes played are going to Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, Jalen Brunson, 1, 3, and 4 in the rankings. At some point, you got to realize that you got to trust your bench a little bit more.
Yeah, well, that's Tom Thibodeau, right? He plays his players many minutes. That's last year because they had some injury issues last year, but those guys are playing big minutes, and that got them. I think that was the reason they kind of faded there in the playoffs and wound up losing before they got to the conference finals. So I don't know. This year it's a question mark. You say they're pretenders. I think it's they have been so far. They can't beat the elite teams. So will they be able to pick it up? You would think that
I would say for a normal team, yes.
But you would think Thibodeau would find a way. He's the defensive guru. Why can't he make those guys play defense a little bit better?
Well, speaking about
one other thing,
yeah,
Mitchell Robinson coming back could be big, right?
I think it will be.
If he plays center, and they move Towns, who really rather play the
4 spot, yeah,
the 4 spot, and is a good outside shooter. I think maybe that could make a difference.
I think it will, because I think it'll, first of all, increase second chance points with offensive rebounds, which, by the way, taking a look at the numbers for offensive rebounds, they're not ideal. They're 20th in the NBA in offensive rebounds. They need better, because last year, not only were they a better defensive team, 10th in defensive rating compared to 22nd this year, they're also 5th in net rating last year. This year, while they're 6th, that's because their offense is significantly better. I think they were 16th in points. They were 19th in points per game. This year they're 5th. So their offense is taking a massive spike, which is interesting. Their defense is plummeted. And by the way, going up against the Eastern teams, because the West teams, the only way you're going to face them when it matters the most is if you make the NBA Finals, which the Knicks haven't done in decades. The Knicks are 0-5 against the Cavs and the Celtics. They're outscored by an average of 21.2 points per game. And this is crazy. They allow an average of 126.6 points on 52.6% shooting against the Celtics and the Cavs this year. Boston and Cleveland, here's the thing. We talk about the perimeter defenders of Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby. Both those teams are averaging 19.2 threes per game on 44% shooting from the 3. You're supposed to get upgrades by extending OG Anunoby on a $212 million contract and trading, the whole world for Mikal Bridges. This is what that trade was supposed to do. and you haven't been able to get it done.
Yeah, it's kind of on the coach.
Yeah, and by the way, talk about the offensive rebounds. This year, they're 20th. Last year, they were number 1 in the NBA. And that's because for a big portion of the beginning of the season, the number 1 offensive rebounder in the league was Mitchell Robinson.
Yeah, and they had Hartenstein, too.
Right, and that was also big because once Mitchell Robinson go down, who was able to pick up not only the offensive rebound slack, because we remember, I think it was against the 76ers, when Dante DiVincenzo got that clutch 3 late, that was off an Isaiah Hartenstein rebound off a Dante DiVincenzo miss. Hartenstein also picked it up on the defensive end, interior defense. That's where they don't really have anybody. Absolutely.
I think they miss him.
Because you have, a 6'8" guy in Precious Achiuwa trying to play the 5. You can't. Karl-Anthony Towns is one of their worst defenders. I think we're taking a look now how great or how much of an impact offensively the Timberwolves valued Karl-Anthony Towns because they had the Defensive Player of the Year in Rudy Gobert playing down low. The Knicks don't have that type of dynamic because you have Precious Achiuwa coming in there, and then Karl-Anthony Towns, and also sometimes Josh Hart goes out there, and he'll probably take the axe once Mitch Robinson gets out there to be the starter. But as it currently stands, if you can't beat any of the top teams, you're not going to go far because let's just say that it's a complete different situation in this year by chance because the Knicks are such a higher seed. They eventually make the Eastern Conference Finals. Most likely, it's going to be against the Cavs or the Celtics. If you're 0-, I think they play the Cavs a couple more times here. If let's say you go 0-9 against them, they have all the momentum because you haven't beaten them a single time.
Well, maybe the Cavs and the Celtics will be overconfident.
Maybe the Celtics because you know what's weird about the Celtics? They have a horrible home record again. Yeah. They do great on the road. I think they're 18-10 at home or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's something
that their record is not that great this year. They lost 16 games.
Well, I mean, you can't always dominate with 65 win seasons.
Yeah, but look at the players they have. I guess the other teams have gotten a little better.
The Cavs have gotten significantly better.
Yeah.
And then obviously OKC in the Western
Celtics
Conference.
beat the Cavs last time they played them.
They always play close, though, generally. I mean, the Celtics are a tremendous team. They just won the NBA Finals. But no, this Knicks team as it currently stands, and, I'm not necessarily saying that, if Mitch Robinson goes out there and performs, I'm, eating my words here because as it currently stands, if the Knicks can't beat any of the top teams, obviously they're pretenders because you got to go through a couple of these teams unless first round upsets, which if you're the Celtics, that's a maybe. The Cavs, I don't know because they've been so dominant, this entire season. But yeah, the only hope and prayer that the Knicks could get is a first round upset because then you're playing lesser tier talent throughout the rest of the playoffs.
No, if they can sneak in at this 3 seed in the East,
I don't think it's a sneak because they're 4.5 games above Milwaukee.
Yeah, okay.
They aren't playing very well.
So then they'll get an easier draw.
As it currently stands, they would play Detroit, who is 32-26.
Yeah.
So what? That's 5.5 games.
Yeah.
So again, the gap from 1 and 2, which is the Cavs and the Celtics, that's very close. And then you go to the Knicks at the 3, and it's a massive drop-off. Milwaukee's severely inconsistent. Indy is inconsistent. Detroit, great job on the comeback from the previous couple of years.
Yeah, right.
They're currently the 6th seed.
They went what? How long? Didn't they challenge the losing streak?
They
NBA?
broke it. They broke it. They
were
the losers. They were 14-68 last year. Now they're 32-26.
So that's a big turnaround.
This will probably be if all things go as they look. This will be their first playoff appearance since 2018-2019 when they lost in the first round. So there's a shot they make it, and my guess is if the current standings stay the way they are, the Knicks would play the Pistons. I would probably take the Knicks another sweeper or take them in 5. That's just the way it would probably turn out for them. But you're going to need to play the top 3 teams. You're going to play at least the top 2 teams in the East at some point. You got to beat them. If you can't beat them, then what are we doing here? Why did you trade so much for Mikal Bridges? Why did you trade away Julius Randle? That was probably a contract situation. But Dante DiVincenzo. He averaged, 40% from 3? Now, what's crazy is that Dante's dealing with an injury thing, and Julius Randle also was dealing with an injury thing,
as usual.
Right, exactly. But also Mitchell Robinson, we haven't seen him since the playoffs last year.
Yeah, he's been injury prone. And whether he'll be okay when he comes back, we'll see. Whether he can hang in there.
Hey, I need to see Mitch Robinson out there because I want to see. He hasn't played in nearly a year.
Yeah.
How will he look when he's out there?
Yeah. And has he really recovered once he gets out there and plays NBA ball, a few games? Will he re-injure himself? I hope not. I'd like to see him play well.
And then let's just say Mitch Robinson, it takes him a little while, so maybe they'll lose a game they should have won, or maybe two of those. But if he somehow gets in form within the next month, and we see him as he was before, being a tremendous interior defender and also a phenomenal offensive rebounder, that's where I think that the tide could shift for the Knicks.
Yeah.
Because then you have a better opportunity against Kristaps Porzingis or Jared Allen or any of these big guys where, okay, we can't stop them because they're the NBA. Like, these are NBA players. They're phenomenal players.
And maybe
but
slow
them down a little
yeah.
bit, because then Karl-Anthony Towns could do his offensive tricks there. Then Jalen Brunson could be the maestro he could be, because Jalen Brunson is horrible at defense. I think this is one of his worst defensive seasons of his entire career. Karl-Anthony Towns, like I mentioned, he's 7th in defense. He's in the 7th percentile of rim protection this season. He can't guard down low. He's terrible at it.
But that's not his position anyway.
Correct, but in this team, he needs to at least put in something.
Yeah.
And there's really no production there, because this is a tremendous offensive output team. Defensively, run for the hills. 22nd in defensive rating.
Which is odd for Tom Thibodeau.
Correct. And that's why I think that when it comes down to it, Mitch Robinson should be something. But until that happens, my guess is we're going to see somewhat of the same, getting blown out in every single first quarter that you play against these top-tier teams, and blown out in the first half of these games. And I mean, they were and what's crazy is, in the first half, the two I added context to, they were winning at halftime. But then in the fourth quarter, when they're out there for 46 minutes, all of a sudden you have guys coming off the bench like Aaron Wiggins dropping 15 points on 4-4 shooting from 3, and then you lose. Yeah. Or going up against the Cavs, early in the year, back in October. 3 of 4 from 3 gets 15 points. Cavs shoot 64.7% in the fourth quarter. I think you shoot 33%. I think you shot 13% from 3.
That could be the fatigue issue you talked about.
It's absolutely fatigue, and that's what Tom Thibodeau does. It's a sad thing, because it requires a lot of energy, and you get so far, but then once it's the playoffs, and then you're playing 7-game series, every other day with maybe a 2-day break in between when you're traveling, it's brutal.
Well, they don't have the depth. They haven't got the players they trust beyond the starting 6 or so.
Correct, and that's where Tom Thibodeau needs to come into play, and they have to hope if they're going to make the playoffs. But once they make the playoffs, that you have to blow out teams, so in the fourth quarter you could rest a bunch of your starters, so then they will be fresh and ready for the next round or the next game. Instead of having them be out there in a close game, they're playing 42 minutes a game.
Yeah,
because you have to play 42 minutes a game.
Well, they haven't been able to figure that part of it out.
No.
Ever since Thibodeau's been there, his players play big minutes in the playoffs.
Like I said, the top 5 minutes played this season, 3 of them are held by New York Knicks. You can't do that if you want them to play at a high intensity through 82 games plus the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not a recipe for success. Hi, everybody. Thank you for watching this clip of the Harvey Hour. If you want to watch the full show, you can by clicking the I in the top right-hand corner right now. If you want to take the show with you on the go, it is available wherever you get your podcast. We go live here on YouTube every single Tuesday and Friday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, so make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, and the notification bell to get notified whenever we upload a video and whenever we go live.